Well, hello. It's such a great opportunity to get together and to share some reflections. Just recently, the American bishops finished their yearly meetings in Baltimore. And this is always a great opportunity for the bishops to get together to speak about some of the current topics that are on their minds. Obviously, one of the big themes this time was the National Eucharistic Congress, which will be celebrated next July in Indianapolis, something that I'm personally very excited about, something that I think is great news for the church, one of the greatest pastoral initiatives that I have seen because it's focused on Christ. And I think so often in the church we can get distracted in a lot of peripheral matters that might be very important in themselves, but that it's too easy oftentimes to get distracted from what is most important, which is obviously Christ, and something that we're all constantly in need to be reminded. Hopefully, this is something that, as a church in this country, we can really get behind, and that we get used to our regular congresses, and that in our parish communities, we are more and more involved and really fostering Eucharistic life. So often when we think about church news, we might think about negative things, and I think that it's important to look at what is positive as well. And in that sense, I was very encouraged and impressed by the article that Archbishop Gomez, the Archbishop of Los Angeles, published in Angeles News, which is kind of the LA archdiocese newspaper. We could say, at least the online edition. And so I'd like to read a little bit what he said, and then maybe comment a little bit before signing off. So he says, I was in Baltimore last week for the annual plenary assembly of the United States Catholic bishops. It was the bishops' first meeting for our four new auxiliary bishops who were ordained in September. Right, so in Los Angeles, we were just blessed with four new auxiliary bishops. So it was a special time for me to pray and share with them and auxiliary bishop Mark Trudeau. Mark Trudeau is the auxiliary bishop who, the fifth auxiliary bishop, or the first, depending on how you want to look at it, right? The one who was there before these other four were named and consecrated just recently. Um, and then the Archbishop continues, I always come away from these gatherings with my brother bishops feeling hopeful and inspired. And I was thinking, how often do we go to meetings and come away feeling hopeful and inspired? Um, it becomes so clear that God is alive and his spirit is working in the church in so many beautiful ways, not only here in Los Angeles, but across the country. In the United States, we are blessed to have good bishops leading our diocese, many appointed in the last decade. Also, as we see our new bishops here in Los Angeles, across the country, a fine new generation of auxiliary bishops has been appointed in recent years, men of prayer who are alive with apostolic zeal. And here's something that's so important, that we need to have that prayer life, and that has to be at the center of our life in the church. That's why I'm personally so excited about the National Eucharistic Revival, because it really is putting Christ at the center. But at the same time, that apostolic zeal, that being able to receive our Lord, that's not the end of the story, but we want to give him to others and have others share in that. And in a world where we're so often bombarded by darkness, well, it's good to be symbols and sources of light. So after speaking well of the bishops, he goes on, the same is true of our new American priests. Across the country, an excellent new generation is being ordained. These are men who are on fire to spread the gospel, men who love Jesus and long to make Jesus loved by every heart. Here's what, in just the first couple of paragraphs, the Archbishop is leaving very clear that in the United States, we're blessed to have good bishops and good priests. And that's something that we have to remember. So it's so often the bad news that makes it out. But we have to remember there's so many good men at the service of the church. We see all this here in Los Angeles, and in my conversations with my brother bishops, they see it in their diocese too. The American church is doing what Christ commanded. We are united in the urgent task of proclaiming his gospel of love and seeking to save souls. And this is something that's so important as we get ready for the Feast of Christ the King, the Solemnity of Christ the King, 34th Sunday of Ordinary Time, last Sunday before Advent. And it's a day to really remember and to reflect on the fact that Christ is King. And we look at our political atmosphere, and it's very easy to get discouraged. And we look at world at the world violent situations, both at home and abroad, and it's very easy to get discouraged. But I think that the more that we really draw on our faith and look at what is actually happening in the world and seeing that desire of so many to build up Christ's kingdom, well, then we can be filled with hope and with courage. We are also striving to build Christ's kingdom, spreading the social message of the gospel, and through our charities and outreach efforts, working for a world that protects the sanctity and dignity of the human person as a child of God. All right, so this is something that was important as well. That came up in the meetings. They did speak a little bit about some pro-life issues and reminded themselves that this is one of the primordial or preeminent tasks of the American bishops to continue to fight for life. And that's something that I hope that each one of us as Catholics is able to do as well, to recognize and to be aware of the great gift that we have to have a church that's united, fighting for life, and a church that stands up even when the world tries to push a very different direction and we try to pull the world to Christ. We began our meeting in Baltimore with a Mass for Peace, praying especially for Ukraine and Palestine and Israel. In our sessions, we reaffirmed our commitment to defend migrants and refugees and seek solutions to our long broken immigration system. One of our most important discussions concerned the growing crisis of mental health and the bishop's new National Catholic Mental Health campaign aimed at raising awareness and helping people find care and treatment. And I was excited about this paragraph because it's precisely one of the areas where I'm involved, working at the Divine Mercy Clinic and Family Center in in the Los Angeles Archdiocese in Duarte, Santa Teresita. Well, I feel like we're kind of at the forefront, at least in our own little corner, but really helping people grow in their mental health. We have these clinicians, and they're able to attend people. And then Father John and myself working there as priests, as spiritual directors. Right now we're getting ready for a marriage retreat in just a couple of weeks, and so all of that, helping, because I think that even looking at marriages and parents, um, that their ability to kind of heal past wounds and past trauma, to improve their communication, and then to improve their parenting skills. Well, this is a way that we can really contribute to national mental health, down the road, because so many of the issues that people deal with are things that have come up precisely during childhood. And so the better families that we have, well, the healthier that people are going to be as well. Then it brings up another point that I think is very important, very crucial to the situation that we're living currently in the United States. Looking ahead to the 2024 elections, we revised the Introduction to Our Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship document to address the most grave threats to life and dignity of the of the human person, including abortion, euthanasia, gun violence, terrorism and death penalty, human trafficking, and efforts to redefine marriage and gender. So this is something that I would recommend to all of us to read in the next year as we come up to the next general elections, and we'll also have our local elections and state elections, and to be aware of what are the vital points. And the bishops looked at this document, and there's talk about a general overhaul, but they saw that it was sufficient, and so they just wanted to kind of uh, adjust. They're going to adjust the introduction to make sure that it's up to date and responds to the current needs of the culture. But really, a lot of the social doctrine of the church, um, that has been talked about and reflected on in the last several decades, well, it is still speaking about the difficulties in today's society. And this isn't a voting guide in the sense that the Catholic hierarchy is going to tell us, this is the person you have to vote for, this is what you have to vote on, this issue and whatnot, but reminding us of the issues that we do have to take into account, and to remember that not everything's at the same level. Property taxes doesn't have the same value as human life. So that's something that I have to take into account when I'm evaluating different candidates or different propositions that might be on the ballot. And Archbishop continues, we face many challenges in the church in this country, but they are the challenges that the church faces in every age and every place. How do we live as followers of Jesus Christ in a world that is hostile to the gospel? How do we proclaim the gospel and pass on our faith to the next generation? Historically, the mission of the American church has always been distinguished by the leadership and participation of the lay faithful. So this is important as well. That isn't just the bishops, meeting off in Baltimore, and then it kind of comes to us to the priests, but this is something that each one of us is supposed to participate in, and that's precisely the significance and the meaning of a lot of the documents that are coming out. There's a certain leadership that does belong to the bishops as the ones who govern the church, but each one of us is called to evangelize, right? And one of the things that I always like to think about, it's not that one role is more important than another, but they're specific and distinct roles. And really the most important thing is to make the church holy. That's something that you and I are supposed to participate in just as much as the bishops. Uh, Archbishop Gomez, and in the presentations of our meeting in Baltimore, it was again clear that lay people are the source of so much creativity and apostolic energy in the church. We are blessed with a diversity of lay apostolates and ministries that work in partnership with bishops and pastors to accompany and deepen the faith of our people, especially our young people and families. The church here has long reflected what the Second Vatican Council called the universal call to holiness. Well, this is one of my favorite themes. I actually wrote one of my papers when I was studying my psychology degree on the universal call to holiness and how that affects us and flourishing and all of that. And the collaborative vision of that Pope Francis is calling to us too, in the Synod on Synodality. That is why I'm so encouraged by the two most important apostolic initiatives in the church right now: the Holy Father's call for synodality and the Universal Church, and the U.S. Bishop's call for Eucharistic revival. And this is really prudent and wise of Archbishop Gomez, reflecting and making that connection, which I think a lot of people probably haven't made. But the synodality is listening to the people. Well, we need to be a people that's praying when we're giving our opinions, when we're sharing our reflections, the things that Christ gives us in our time with Him, and always in a great spirit of obedience as well. So the Pope's delegate, Apostolic Nuncio, Cardinal Christophe Pierre, said in his address to the bishops, Eucharistic revival and synodality go together. Both are about the Church's essential mission of evangelization, about bringing our people to a new encounter with Jesus Christ, the living God, the God of love who came to save us and makes us one family. This divine love is what makes all things new in the Church and in our lives. Bringing people to know this love is the urgent reason for everything we do in the Church, all our teaching and preaching, all our works of mercy and pastoral care. In his encouraging address, Cardinal Pierre quoted Pope Francis's words in concluding the recent synod in Rome: loving God with our whole life and loving our neighbor as ourselves, that is the heart of everything. Pray for me and I will pray for you. Let's thank God for all the gifts He has bestowed in His church in America. And let's ask our Blessed Mother Mary to make the love of her Son the heart of everything we do. So I was really excited about this article that Archbishop Gomez has prepared for all of us. It's going to be a little part of my homily for this Sunday of Christ the King, because I think it's important for us to recognize and to see that the church is moving forward. There's so many different problems and so many difficulties, but this is a church of hope. This is a church of evangelization. This is a church of the youth. This is a church of Eucharistic fervor. This is a church that wants to serve the poor. This is a church that wants to convert our hearts. And that's what makes this church ours. That's what makes this church Christ. God bless.